playing a Regigigas deck against Christian, who is bringing forward. There's what we saw in, I believe, round 1, wasn't it? That Hisuian Zoroark V-Star deck.
Yeah, I didn't expect to see too many Zoroark going this far. It's been a bit off in the meta right now. It's had some success, but it can be a bit of a struggle, and in particular, it struggles against single prizes because of that. The ability of Zoroark is to hit big numbers, and so what we do see now is some Sharon's Care in the list to try and help in those matchups where the one-hit knockouts are available.
Yeah, and Liliana just representing that very highly well-represented deck in day 2. Regigigas, there was plenty in day 1. I think it hit up 9% of our field and meta for day 2 as well, but representing very highly. I believe both players on around the 25 or 26 point mark right now, so putting themselves in a really good position to make it into top 8.
Yeah, and across the board, we've seen this deck play against these decks play against each other in the online era and at events. And for the most part, it tends to go about 60-40 in favor of the Regigigas deck. Maybe a little bit more than that because some of the stats might not be fully representative in-person play. So Regigigas definitely in favor here, and it will be down to Liliana trying to come in and play it as well as possible. And with every combo deck, there's always a chance that it won't quite play off as hoped.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen from other players playing Regigigas, you know, it had that popularity from the United States regionals where many top 8'd in one of the tournaments. Like I said, it's very well represented here over this weekend in Warsaw because of the inherent power of the deck. We've mentioned this many, many times, that 9% that we've got for the Regigigas represented in day 2, being able to hit weakness on so many good decks right now. And that's one of the key reasons why it might be slightly favored in the Regigigas. You know, it has the Regirock to be able to take knockout hits on the actual Hisuian Zoroark itself because of the ×2 weakness. It'll be interesting to see. Christian does play the Dunsparce, but of course it's just a kind of, you know, it's only in play sometimes once, and it's not always possible to get it back at the same time. But it'll be really interesting to see how he navigates through this.
And you say the Dunsparce, there's so much that's needed for a Zoroark to get the attack off. There's so many combo pieces. You have to start getting damage on everything you play, so you want to get that Gapejaw bog down early so you don't have to worry about using damage pumps with Gengar in the future. And if you start thinking about having to integrate Dunsparce into that whole process, you lose one of those options that previously would have just been, I'm just going to get a Pokemon in play. So there is some elements to this matchup that make it tougher, and as we mentioned, it is in favor of Regigigas, but as is possible with any deck in Pokemon, it can always cause those upsets, and a lot of it's down to the play of the players, and at this stage, both of them being this high up on table 5, would expect the play to be at a top level, so it will go down to that matchup, which is Christian's going to know that right now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure he may have faced maybe one or two. Like I said, there was a massive representation from Regigigas because, like I said, it's such a very powerful deck. It just unfortunately does struggle with consistency at times, but Christian does have a few different quite unique things he can try and do. As you mentioned, that damage pump, you know, that Dunsparce is likely to get some damage on it at some point coming down from the stadium that it has, but then it makes it susceptible to things like the Regieleki. Being able to snipe 40 damage onto the bench. But just as we go to the feature match table right now, we're about to start Game 1. Looks like Christian's just drawn the first card, so good luck to both players. We'll be really interested to see how both can navigate this going forward.
Oh, and we've spoken about the V-Star markers being varied across the weekend, but you can see there the V Astro, which I assume is the Italian name for V-Star. Always fun here in Europe seeing such a variety of nationalities to be able to come through and represent. And I'm going to be honest, Liliana's flag, I recognize it, but I don't know where it is.
I believe it's Slovakia.
Slovakia. I'm sure people in chat will correct us if we're wrong, but there we go. I haven't seen a Slovakian player on stream before, which is amazing.
No, I think I'd like to say this might be Liliana's first opportunity to be on a feature match. Again, this is, you know, she's on 25 points, right? So she's already, or 26 points. Oh, no, 25 points. Apologies. 8 wins and 1 tie. Means that she's been able to play at a high standard already. This might have a little bit more added pressure being on the feature match with those headsets, with either the white noise or a bit of the sort of music going in. But yeah, I'm sure she'll be able to play through and sort of work out her own way to victory.
And just looking at the prizes here, the one Reggie that you'd not want to see in the prizes is in there for Liliana. 2 of every Reggie except for Reggie Gigas and Reggie Lecky, which is a common combination. And then we see the Reggie Rock is the key piece, the one that's required in those big moments. Reggies often play ways to get basic Pokemon out with a Hisuian heavy ball, because it's very useful to get any missing pieces that you need. Say you prize 2 of the Reggies and you just can't ever get the combo. You have to have that access, but there's only one Hisuian heavy ball in the deck, so not as accessible as some other forms where they play maybe 2.
Yeah, no, 100%. And she's obviously playing the free copies of Ordinary Rod as well to make sure she does start the Reggie Rock. Of course, it's something we just had to make sure we notice, staring down at that weakness, that fighting weakness is in Zoroark V in the active spot for Christian. We saw already the quick ball discarding the Gengar, so he's already got a piece kind of just waiting there when he needs it to increase that damage output. But you see, Christians are starting to get his board set up, does get the Gengar using that ability to put damage counters onto the bench when he comes on with that Neverworld Gate. Does have the Guru as well, and also just using Damage Pump now to actually just basically prep his board. And
with this matchup, you're never going to need to knock out anything too high hit points, so not going to need to spread across all the Pokemon, which is an option in the V-Star or V-Max matchups where you want to be hitting closer to 300. So that's enough damage now on the board. And one thing we're looking right now at the list, the Reggie Gigas list doesn't change too much from player to player. There'll be some changes in numbers here across the board, but there's a few options for techs in Reggie Gigas which haven't been taken here. No Thornton or Greninja setup, which we've seen a little bit.
Yeah.
Some spicier ways to play the deck, and there's a very consistent list on the side of Liliana, which is probably why she's got to this stage.
Yeah, she's done really well, and she does have a couple of unique cards in there. She has the double Cape of Toughness, which is maybe something Christian might have to factor in when sort of applying the extra damage counters on his board to increase his damage output. Right now dealing 150 with that ticking curse attack. Of course, reduced by 20 damage because of the double turbo energy that will have to be attached to the Zoroark to get into play. But after the Crobat setup, he's shaking his head, which is a little bit of a tell, and he's
praying. Please don't find the combo pieces.
Ideally, not the best, because I think there's a card that we mentioned. There is one massive prize right now.
Oh yeah, we were looking at the Reggies because Reggies is such a key deck to check the prizes on. But actually, in this matchup, Zoroark needs one, and it's not there.
Yeah, it's not there. He may be able to take it quite early, but that Dunsparce is just kind of going to be chilling in those prizes for a little bit, which kind of puts Christian on a bit of a situation, to actually combat this Regigigas matchup. But, Liliana does go straight for the Regidrago and starts to consider her options in terms of setting up her board.
Yeah, the ways that the Zoroark wins the match is, firstly, getting the Dunsparce down, so then it's a 2-for-1 trade, and then it's just a back and forth of, will my Zoroark get a turn extra because your combo pieces don't come through? And then the other way is that the combo of all of the Reggies down doesn't come through. And to be honest, if you've not got that Dunsparce in play, the Reggie has a little bit more time to set up. And so right now, no Dunsparce in play. Liliana's probably thinking about it, but not too worried as it's not in play yet. So we'll just be thinking, I can take my time, just play everything I need to. And to a certain extent, there's not a huge amount you can do except for try your best to find all those Reggies.
No, exactly. You're going to be, like I mentioned yesterday when we saw the Reggies a couple of times on stream, on the feature matches, sequencing is super important with the Regigigas deck, because you want to be maximizing that Dragon's Horde ability from that Regidrago. You want to be maximizing the right attachments from Ancient Wisdom. And, you can't always just necessarily go all in with certain attackers. And there's points where you just have to make sure your game plan and your hand is workable going forward as well. As we see Liliana just pull out the Regice as well, now up to 4 of the Reggies on the board. So it's really interesting to kind of see how we maneuver the rest of the matchup here as well. Does have that Dragon's Horde Regidrago in the active spot now.
And also a scoop up net to potentially reset it. So going to do the Dragon's Horde to start things off. We'll get another important Reggie down. Has a scoop up net. We'll be able to reset and have another go with that Dragon's Horde.
Does have options to use Regigate as well from numerous of the Reggies that allow you to sort of search your deck for a basic Pokemon. It does have that energy attached, I believe, to that Registeel, a Pokemon happy to sacrifice if necessary. And there's the Regigigas coming down as well. So it's the full board setup from Liliana's side of the field.
And that scoop up net was so vital there to get that extra Dragon's Horde potential available. And then, as you mentioned, the synergy here with the Regigate, everything coming together. You've got a draw engine built into the Regis, you've got basic Pokemon search built in, and then that energy acceleration is the key on Regigigas to be able to get the team going. Ancient Wisdom, like we said, the weakness from Regirock, most likely outcome will be we'll see lots of those energies going to Regirock and brought back over and over again with the Ordinary Rod to try and use the weakness against Zoroark. But on the other side, we see that V Astra being used for the Hisuian Zoroark's ability, which is great for consistency, Phantom Star.
Yeah, being able to, once during your turn, not once during your turn, one time, of course, because it's a V-Star ability, to discard your hand and draw a further 7. So a research and an ability is fantastic, allows you to have that bursting potential to deal a lot of damage. Typically what you'd like to see with the Hisuian Zoroark matchups, when you're facing a lot of the V-Max matchups like Kyurem, for example, or Muse. Just being able to burst a load of damage onto the board where possible. I think Christian's just double-checking the resources Liliana's had to go through so far. A little shake of the head. Again, not the best poker face, but aims to target down that Regirock as soon as possible. So bosses it up. This is exactly what you kind of want to try and do right now. Christian needs to take prizes, needs to get that Dunsparce out of the prizes as soon as possible, and targets the threat that's on the board.
Yeah, and that just adds another question for Liliana. We did see that Ordinary Rod last turn, so we know that the hand is set up for this knockout. But it will then require a bit of search. You'll have to find it out the deck. It's not as easy as a Clara would be to just get it back into your hand.
Yep.
But this is where the consistency of Liliana's deck is going to be so vital. A lot of really good counts in here. 4 of Trekking Shoes, for example, just help you to dig through. That helps you get those energies into the discard pile as well. 4 research. We see a lot of ball search here for the Pokemon. And then also some of these energies, like Gift Energy, for example, will help along the way to help you get draws up to 7.
Yeah, it's going to be vital right now. Liliana, I believe, maybe only has 1 of the energies now, since one of them is actually attached to the Registeel. There might be 1 in the discard. It's another part of the combo that she needs to kind of set up to be able to get those Aurora energies into the discard, to use that Ancient Wisdom, to then be able to actually use the multiple attackers that she has. And there's just a quick bump of the stadium as well, the path to the peak coming into play.
And this is where that Regirock being prized is so vital, because we see 1 in the prizes and there's now 1 in the deck. Had it not been prized, this now situation would be 2 in the deck, or maybe even 1 in the hand ready for that knockout to come through. So just making that journey to find your and chain your Regis that much harder, and going for the Marnie here, putting the Registeel into the active spot with that energy attached. Another energy could be attached through Regigigas to potentially make it so that it can retreat manually, and the scoop up net's available. So smart decision here, just protecting for the out of not finding the Regirock and being able to use that Regigate to bring it back. Yeah,
finding a way to try and use a pivot, because there's that additional attachments from Ancient Wisdom, just attaching and using him as a pivot opportunity is the best thing you could do as a Regis player. You know, Liliana wouldn't be at 8-2-1 if she wasn't able to kind of find these plays already. There's the quick ball, discarding one of the Regidragos from her hand to get the Regirock back into the field. So there is a Gift Energy and the Twin Energy, attached to that Registeel. There's the retreat. Here's the Ancient Wisdom about to happen, going to the active Regigigas. Has double Twin Energy and is able to start applying pressure to Christian's side of the board. Does increase his damage cap because now there's damage on the active as well, but it's not a knockout. This means Christian's able to take 2 prizes with this first Zoroark.
Yeah, using the Regigigas here just due to the availability of energy. Nothing, not enough to power up the Regirock. With Regirock requiring fighting energy, and in fact 2 of them, you'll need to find multiple Aurora energy to be able to attach there. And there are 4 in the deck, but they need to be in that discard pile or in the hand to start that process off. And just looking now at the matchup chart, Regis has a really good matchup chart against most of the popular decks right now. Maybe Palkia and Teleon a little bit unfavored. So a great pick here from Liliana to come in with the Reggies. And as we mentioned, 9% of the field in the day 2 is Reggies.
Yeah, and I think when we both spoken to the judges, as we've been walking around, you know, sort of having a bit of an understanding of the meta from day 1, there was plenty of people who thought Reggie's is in such a good place. You know, since the release of Gift Energy, being able to help draw additional cards up to 7 if a Pokemon's knocked out and it's attached to, really just kind of puts it in such a powerful position, because we already knew how good the attackers were, especially being able to sort of combine using that Aurora energy to use a multitude of different attackers and different weaknesses that you could hit. We're just going very quickly back to Christian's side of the board. He did just Luminion for that Sharon's Care. We saw this yesterday as well in round 1, the sort of one-off tech, which is super important in these kind of colorless decks. Of course, being able to pick up your your colorless Pokemon and sort of then replenish the rest of the field, because he has a Zoroark already on the bench ready to go.
It's so key in the one prize matchups as well, because it just gives you that extra turn to keep going.
And there you go. The Dunsparce has been taken. Maybe a bit of a sigh of relief from there by Christian. Does need to find a way to get a Pokemon off the bench so he can play it down at some stage. But maybe Christian, yeah, he looks like he's just kind of touching wood for a bit of luck there as well. But we'll see how Liliana can respond from this point.
Yeah, you mentioned doesn't have a very good poker face. Started off looking very sad. Just after that turn there, looking very happy. The Sharon's Care bringing back a turn. The Regirock now could get the knockout, but forcing the Regirock to have to get the knockout is, again, asking lots of questions. But the fact that he found that Dunsparce is going to put him in a confident position that, yes, he might give away 1, but he would have had to have done that anyway in the way it was set up before.
Yep.
And he knows he's got a Pal Pad as well to potentially bring back that Sharon's Care for another recovery. So many options here to keep the Reggies out of being able to get quick and easy knockouts. And this is such a different way to play Zoroark. Normally it's their power up and then just announce 3 attacks in a row. But having to dodge and weave around a single prize deck is a lot more challenging.
Yeah, we've seen Zoroark, you know, just be such a defining card in a lot of metas before, where we had the previous Zoroark GX with the trade and then sort of just being able to Righteous Beating, if I recall correctly. May have got that slightly wrong. But we've seen Zoroark now coming back into the fore. He's just been mining another shake of the head, because he knows that Dunsparce is going to be at the bottom of the deck. He will need to find a way to pull that out. He does play the maximum copies of Ultra Balls and Quick Balls, but it'll be interesting to see if he's able to navigate himself back out to get the Dunsparce at some stage. Just there, going back over to Liliana, yes.
You just see the disruption right now. Every game on stream with these top players has involved some form of disruption. Marnie being a great example of that. The one of Roxanne in a lot of decks. Doing things like attaching a tool card to ask another question. Can you knock this Pokemon out with Big Charm? Do you have the choice belt to knock this out? I'm going to heal this Pokemon. You know, so much has been about stealing turns back. And you can see how effective it has been by both sides here as they back and forth throughout the game. Right now, Liliana's just trying to find a way to get the energy onto this Regirock that will be enough to get the knockout. And as you can see, nothing of flavor. It's all just colorless. And that's going to be the retreat instead.
Yeah, it looks like it's just a retreat to kind of maybe send up an offering again, which is going to be this Registeel this time, without an attack off. This is, again, it's kind of showcasing how great it was to kind of set up the board, have the 6 Reggies out, but she still needed to get the energy. So it's showing that kind of inconsistency levels of the Reggies at times, which is very unfortunate. She's still going to be looking to try and hit for the weakness where possible right now, because that Dunsparce still is kind of hiding somewhere and isn't able to hit the field currently. Just kind of making sure there. We did see from her last turn as well, she was able to pull out the other Regirock from her prizes, because that Hisuian Heavy Ball is now taking its place. So, you know, she's going to be having multiple Pokemon that could do it now, but she's now going to be having to eventually face up against the Dunsparce, which will remove that weakness from the Hisuian Zoroark Vista.
Yeah, as we mentioned, this is a tough matchup for the Zoroark, and we're watching it done beautifully here by Christian. One of the tougher decks in the format right now to play. There's a lot of decks that can counter it. And so to come into this tournament and go 8-2-1 with the deck, Christian, very familiar with it, knows the ins and outs of it, is very comfortable with the way the deck works. And we see there the research pretty much fully set up right now, just needs to find a way to get that Dunsparce down if possible. But in order to do that, there needs to be a space opened up. And while that Zoroark's not getting knocked out, doesn't need the Dunsparce.
Yeah, exactly. You know, just being able to make the prize trade in the right favor, because typically, you know, where Reggie's really sort of capitalizes on other sort of V Pokemon, taking those 2 prizes where it can, hitting for weakness. If Christian can take 2 prizes per Zoroark, and at this stage, free prizes for just a kind of essentially one use of a Zoroark itself because of the use of the Sharon's Care, it really sort of swings it in his
there we
favor.
go.
There's a load of the energy from that research, I believe, and an Aurora already discarded.
Yeah, Aurora discarded with the research. 2 Auroras drawn off of that research. A quick ball in hand to get rid of one. Manual attachment available as well. So the Regirock now going to get powered up this turn. But we are seeing the prizes now. That 3-prize start for Zoroark is key.
Yeah.
When you're against a combo deck, you really need to hit it early. You need to start off strong so you can catch them before they get the combination down. And that's what we see here.
Actually, the Aurora attachment with the discard of the Aurora. Yep, just thinking about, again, we're always going to go back to the prizes. Christian's going to be just wanting to take 3 knockouts, 3 attacks to go. So both players, in theory, only need 3 attacks to be able to win the game. Of course, Liliana hasn't seen that Dunsparce yet, but that's what Christian's going to be aiming for to really kind of inhibit that prize trade.
Yeah, and we just saw, I mentioned the quick ball to discard the Aurora Energy, but even just stuff like using an Aurora Energy to discard the Aurora rather than the quick ball gives more outs in the future through potential disruption to find a Regirock if needed, because the energy isn't the problem later on to find. That goes into discard pile, could instantly be recycled. It's always finding those basics, so keeping as many outs in Liliana's deck through that quick ball, very smart play, good efficiency.
No, 100%. And this is one of the few cards that I have started to see in Zoroark as well. There's one card which Christian is holding on to, which we see typically in Mulis. That Cramomatic is there. He's going to be starting maybe to start flipping some cards to really kind of get access to things like that Dunsparce. But just pick any card from a deck. It's a fantastic sort of resource to maybe remove some of the additional item cards which aren't useful necessarily in this matchup. Maybe that cancelling Cologne, which, you know, no, it's not really that useful in this matchup at all. So, you know, being able to Chromatic that could be a fantastic way of doing so. But
get some value out of the
exactly. And we've also seen the Silene as well. So he could start to refresh and get back some of the energies that sometimes you may have to lose. Here's the first Chromatic. It's Tails.
That's the
is it a tail? Yeah, there you go. Is it a heads?
No, we didn't quite see it there. Based off of the fact he's picked up his deck, we're going to assume it's a heads. Yep.
Is that a heads?
I don't know. We didn't see
Maybe
it.
it wasn't that dice on the left-hand side.
Yeah, well, this is the challenge with the Chromatic is it does flip tails sometimes. Yes. And having had a 3-round Swiss playing a deck with Chromatic and flipped over 90% tails, I refuse to go back to a deck with a Chromatic in, but maybe in the future I'll revisit it. But for Christian here, believes it helps with the consistency in this deck. You know, every little opportunity to get that combo piece needed. Yep. We mentioned how Reggie's is a combo deck. It is. More so than most decks here at the regional, but Hisuian Zoroark does require a lot more pieces than most decks to start working, and so definitely having a combo piece found through that Chromatic is key.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, but you know, it is high risk, high reward, so being able to also find that Volo, which is discarding one of your bench Pokemon V, kind of opens up the option and bench space available. You don't want to give up easy prizes. You know that Zoroark already is a V Pokemon. There's some weaker HP Vs on the bench there in that Crobat and that Luminion. So Volo is a great little tech as well to kind of open up bench space.
We didn't spot that before. That could have been used to get the Dunsparce down when the bench was full, but you just saw there Liliana just reading it to make sure there was nothing missed.
And there he is. There's his little head.
Dunsparce is very undervalued as a Pokemon. I think Dunsparce needs a bit of love. And I think Hisuian Zoroark fans should give Dunsparce some love because it could help Hisuian Zoroark survive in this match right here. 4 prizes left for Regigigas deck to take. 3 on the side of Zoroark with an attack about to be announced. And as we know, the Regirock will be chained quite simply now, just due to the energy being available. So many Bull Search outs. There is 2 Regirocks in the deck as well.
Yeah, there is one slight risk here. Christian hasn't been able to get another attacker on the board. So if Liliana is able to get still the 2-hit knockout on the Zoroark and Christian isn't able to continue setting up the board, Christian may go down to 1 prize. But if there's no attacker there to sort of continue that chain, because he just needs to keep going with the attackers, it makes it a little bit difficult. There is also the opportunity to use that Regice and that Blizzard Bind attack, dealing 100 damage, and then causing the defending Pokemon, if it's a Pokemon V, not being able to attack next turn. So that could be another way of stalling.
It seems
Stalling
that's
out.
what Liliana is going for here, putting that Regice straight up, and there's so many options with this deck, and that is great game management, as you said. No other attacker available, so no easy just one retreat into another attacker. It will need to be a retreat and bounce back for that Zoroark to get back into the active.
And there it is. There's the Blizzard Bind. That puts it onto 120 damage. Of course, Christian can manipulate some of that damage on his active Zoroark, but right now puts it within range of a Regidrago attack, which does 160 as well. The Giant Fangs as an option for next turn. So Christian in a little bit of a tricky spot, despite having the Dunsparce down, will mean he just needs to find, as you mentioned, a way of kind of retreating and pivoting around. But he doesn't look like he plays many switch outs. It's just a couple of air balloons. Typically he just wants to be at streaming attacks with the Zoroarks themselves. So he's in a bit of a spot.
And if it wasn't for the early start of the Regigigas deck, attempting to go for that Dunsparce is not a good decision right now, because if you attack the Dunsparce, it's a waste of a turn and it just helps the rhythm of the Zoroark deck. Maybe in a future game we might see it attacked earlier on, because there's not much Pokemon retrieval here on Christian's side. The only way to do it would be through the Silene, which requires a coin flip and is just any cards from your discard pile.
Just more coin flips, more high risk, more high reward cards there, which is, I think we saw it yesterday where someone maybe chromatic for the Silene, didn't we? And then having to get that kind of energy of, it was a Mew VMAX back in one of the feature matches in day one. Lots of low percentage coin flips, but you know, sometimes they just pay off and sometimes they will win you the game.
Yeah, and that just gives that Dunsparce a permanent residence in the discard pile if it does get knocked out. Like we said, Silene the only way back. But there we go. There's the secondary attacker coming down. That will help keep the longevity of this play. So right now, 2 prizes to get for Christian. He's going to announce an attack at the end of this turn here, and then going to need to chain it into one more attack to win the game.
He still needs to just find a way of retreating after that Blizzard Bind.
True.
Just to remind everyone. Because
yes, of course.
He's unable to attack right now.
Oh, I forgot about that. The retreat. It still needs to do a retreat. And again, that's the Liliana has played so well with this Regi deck, finding all these different ways to stall their opponents. And so a lot needed right here. And stalling for a turn might be enough to get Regigigas back into the game. Yeah,
but this is probably the best way of just kind of retreating to a single prizer. Gives them maybe a chance to just have a bit of respite, have a turn off. You know, still has access to at least 2 more DTs and the Silene as well. Does have the air balloon Gengar on his bench, but doesn't want something to get knocked out ideally. Actually, it doesn't really matter at this point, because it will force Liliana into an awkward spot where she's then still having to take 3 knockouts instead of necessarily the 2. But the air balloon may help if that knockout doesn't happen, is an option. But Christian, just considering his plays right now, really mulling over who he's going to promote. The air balloon looks like it's the most sensible choice, because if the knockout doesn't happen, can just free retreat. If it happens, you're going to bring up the Zoroark anyway. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Liliana can now work around with what's been promoted.
Yeah, I do think the Gengar there was the strongest decision. Just in case the knockout doesn't come and need that retreat, you do have access to a air balloon free retreat then, thanks to the reduction of 2 retreat cost. But yeah, one thing you did notice there, with the Zoroark deck, it must be so tricky shifting those cards around with all the damage counters on top. Always constantly having to readjust them afterwards, and can't do too much flair on your retreats.
No, 100%. And like I mentioned, that sort of manipulation of the dice, you know, legal manipulation of the dice with damage pump is something you typically don't always get a chance to see. But it's a fantastic sort of way of just getting things done here. And it looks like there's an ancient wisdom to the Regieleki that looks like the is that the Terraspark one? It looks like the Terraspark one. Being able to do 120 to the active, which would take the KO on the Gengar, but also set up, continue further setting up those bench Zoroarks as well, which currently has 120, and the other Zoroark V has a 20 damage on it, I believe.
Yeah, so this might be a way to get the Dunsparce potentially as well. I don't know the full plan here. We'll see where those 40 damage counters will go. But the knockout coming out, and 40 on the Dunsparce, the other 40 will be going on to we reckon one of the Zoroarks, but this whole game plan, it's so intricate and unique with Regis, and there's so many different ways you could take to victory, and that's just why these top players are able to master the Regis deck, and why it's had so much success recently.
I think that's far more correct. There was a discard of Auroras, which was quite interesting. Just making sure that's also correct as well, because typically you only discard with the other Regieleki when you're just doing the. Oh, it's discard all lightning. My bad. Of course, yep. Completely forgot. I keep thinking about just the 2 energies from the other Regieleki and just the snipe 120. But of course, with Ancient Wisdom, it just keeps coming back, and that's what we keep seeing anyway. But yep, I think that was correct. Picking the Dunsparce, kind of making sure that the threat is there to take it out. Easier to make sure to take the free prize, remaining free prizes, I should say, and also further setting up that Zoroark V-Star on the bench.
And one of the challenges for Regi decks is the time. You know, it takes a long time to get to your end, because if you're playing right down to the final prizes, that's a lot of turns of Pokemon to get through, and there's quite a lot of thought to go into it as well, thinking through the routes and the journeys. And you can see we've already gone through half of the time here just for this first game as it's gone the distance. So this is where you start thinking you have to know you've got a chance to win it. And right now, both players still believe they've got a chance to win it, thanks to that disruption factor. You know, you can always disrupt an opponent enough, as we saw with that Regice, to slow them down. And until that energy is presented for the second Hisuian Zoroark, there's every possibility that we see both of them getting knocked out eventually. But yeah, this is a tough one for Liliana, because you don't want to give up all of that investment you've done into a game when it's getting this close to potential victory.
Christian didn't look too pleased with that Primate Wisdom. Does have to use a Crobat after putting maybe a less useful card to the top of the deck. But as you mentioned, we'll need to try and find that extra DTE to attach that Zoroark as soon as possible to try and force that checkmate scenario. Because if this active, or if there's a way of sort of causing a scenario where that active Zoroark can't attack, it just means that there's just another turn where it just causes a bit of issues from Christian's side of the board. Does find the Sharon's Care. I guess he put it back with the PAL pad. Again, sort of thinking about how best he can utilize those resources, save those Zoroarks where needed.
Yeah, and the big factor here for Regis is they don't tend to have Gust. When you're playing the Regi deck, you don't want to think about sniping the bench. You want to just focus on attacking what's in front of you. And we see there the Manaphy coming down to avoid that Regieleki damage that could potentially happen. So I think that's just a check now, the discard pile from Liliana, whether there's any options. The game plan in her head might have just been stopped by that Manaphy. But as we mentioned, there is no Gust potential with the Regis. And so getting that Dunsparce, the only way to do it is through sniping with the Regielekis. With that bench damage.
Yeah, really, really well played here by Christian, being able to use that Sharon's Care, not on the Zoroark, because of course he needs that second attacker, and also be able to bench that Manaphy down, but just picking up that Oranguru, which he's been able to use already multiple times in this game. I think he's again sort of breathing a bit of a sigh of relief, because he just needs that one final prize, and Liliana is just going to be there to try and commit this active Zoroark to not be able to attack once again. And if she's able to maybe disrupt one more time, it's only 4 cards in Christian's hand. There's one further disruption if possible. She may get another initial turn to try and to force some wacky plays.
And we speak about that double turbo energy being a vital find for Christian. One of the challenges in the single prize matchup is you only have 4 special energies to play throughout your game. So if you say discard one gets knocked out early, one gets removed for whatever reason, or one's prized, it starts to get quite tricky, and you have to start digging towards the end, find that final one. And right now I think that's what Liliana is thinking, is one of them got discarded to retreat, I believe.
Yep.
The Zoroark earlier.
And so one's been knocked out as well from the initial Regirock before Dunsparce came onto the field. So that's already 2. The third one's in the active spot right now, and it's just down to Christian to find that 4th one and to be able to retreat and then take the final KO. So it'll be interesting to see there. There was the Blizzard Bind for 130 damage. I believe, with the choice belt also attached as well. So it's just down to Christian.
Yeah,
There
you
it
see
is.
it.
We do see it. It was about third down from the deck there. So he's just got to shuffle that up and sort of make sure he can find a way.
And there's not a huge amount of draw outside of the research, the Marnies, and things like the Crobats. Most of those options are gone.
Yep.
There's 2 Crobats down on the bench. The Oranguru got picked up and has been replaced by Manaphy. So those extra little checks of the top cards are gone. But a research is going to dig quite deep into this deck. And if it's not found here, that's when he's going to start worrying.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think the chances are very high. It's probably 50-50. There's the DTE. There's the attachment. It's going to be the retreat and a ticking curse from the bench Zoroark to take game 1 for Christian after a bit of a sticky situation with that Dunsparce. It was really interesting to see how he's been able to navigate his way through. Liliana, unfortunately, unable to sort of capitalize on an excellent start of getting all 6 Reggies down.
When you watch a highly skilled Zoroark player, it's like watching a different game. They don't play it the same way we've all seen it played when we've gone down to our locals and we see, I missed some damage on a bench. they are thinking well and truly ahead, and they've got game plans for every deck. As we mentioned, Regigigas, the favoured deck in this matchup in general. Single prizes go well into the Hisuian Zoroark. Energies are a big factor. The 2-for-1 trading is a big factor. We've got the weakness with the Regirock, so that Dunsparce was key. The management of resources were key, and Christian just came out with a wonderful game plan.
Yep, definitely, and it looked relatively easy as well. Didn't really suffer from too many knockouts. Liliana only being able to knock out one Hisuian Zoroark V-Star in this matchup. So it's really interesting to see how Liliana is going to take this going forward. She's going to likely choose to go first because of her loss of game 1. So going into game 2 will be really interesting.
Well, what we saw was the combo pieces on the Reggie side. They found all of the Reggies pretty early on. It was a lack of Aurora energy, which meant that the Regirock was not able to get powered up. There was also a Regirock in the prizes, so if it got chain knocked out, it would be hard to keep getting back. So both prizes on either side limited that early strategy, and thankfully for Christian, he found that Dunsparce after the first knockout, which then brought in that ability to keep Dunsparcing throughout the rest of the game, which I think he was very relieved when he pulled that Dunsparce. He did not look good beforehand, but he looked good once he pulled it.
This was even after Liliana was able to Marnie it away as well after he picked out the prizes. Remember seeing all the little poker tails from Christian when he was just shaking his head, knocking the table for a bit of luck, kind of going through the motions. Liliana doing her best to disrupt with that Marnie, but Christian able to still find a way to get that Dunsparce down anyway. But we join back with the action into game 2. And Liliana kicking things off, I believe. There's the path to the peak down already with the Regigigas in the active spot. Not too sure she was able to do much else other than that. Christian rolling the dice with that chromatic straight off the table. Looked like its tails, otherwise he would have motioned to go for it.
And we know that with the Hisuian Zoroark deck, there isn't a way to get any damage early on. Only playing the DT, I guess the Void Return, a little bit of damage.
Start setting up maybe, but not ideal, of course. Despite it being a non-energy used attacker, which we don't typically see too often. So you don't need to actually even attach an energy to that Zoroark and use Void Return for 30 damage and with the option of switching it out.
Yeah, so at the moment that solo Regigigas is safe in the active spot. And Liliana will use next turn to start exploring for the cards needed. 2 Reggies prize. Both of them are the Reggies that are in 3 counts in those decks, so should be fine in that case. A few searching outs like the quick ball and the heavy ball are not available, but on the other side 3 quick balls are prized.
Yeah, so we're going to be limiting those options to kind of find those extra pieces to burst through. Yeah, we've also see that Sharon's Care in that top left position as well, which we saw used multiple times in game 1 to great effect, being able to sort of preserve the Zoroark V-Stars where possible. There's 1 damage pump, 1 Zoroark V-Star, but he plays a maximum copy of those, so a little bit less to worry about for those 2 cards. Does draw into that Dunsparce very early on. Has the Manaphy also in the active spot, so a lot of his kind of unique tech cards that he needs are there now.
Yeah, it's just that Sharon's Care in combination with the Dunsparce, forcing the 2-hit knockout on the Zoroark. You then pick it up with the Sharon's Care, reset the damage, and that's not going to be possible, especially with that position in the prizes. The way he took the prizes last time, that'll be one of the last ones to be taken. So likely not going to see the Sharon's Care in play this game. but we do see 15 minutes on the clock.
Yeah,
So
no, exactly. But it'd be interesting to see. We haven't quite yet seen any players go rogue and start picking their prizes from the top or from a bit of more of a randomized manner. Always typically going from the bottom at the moment. But yes, time is a massive factor. You touched on it a little bit earlier. The Regigigas does take a bit of time to set up and to kind of just get rolling, really, to be able to start taking knockouts. Well, occasionally on times it can. I mentioned this unlikely yesterday, but then was very quickly. Someone else was able to get that turn 1 attack off. Typically you can't. It's very difficult. We haven't seen Liliana not do too much on her first turn either. So bit of a tricky spot, but she will have access to a supporter next turn.
yeah, that mana you can see in the hand, just about just a lack of basics being put down. I think that's just always the case, right? You don't want to spam basics down onto your bench in your first turn. Generally with decks, if you know there's no threat, you want to only put them down if they're needed. And in this case, the Regis aren't useful unless all of them are down. But I think this is a case for Liliana that she just doesn't have access to them at this stage. So going to do those trekking shoes. Good idea to discard that because you want to be able to put that in later on with the Regigigas.
And the next card was a Research, which is far better for Liliana than a Marnie right now, I would have thought, because she wants to be kind of setting up her own board. If she's just going for that disruption option, she's only going to be seeing 5 cards. So it's interesting play. I guess the view is to try and disrupt your opponent as well where you can. Does pick up a couple of items. There is a Ultra Ball and a Quick Ball there and the Speed Energy, which allows you to attach it to a Regieleki and draw an additional 2 cards. So there's a few sort of utility cards there that will help her.
Yeah, with that Speed Lightning, I think we'll see a Regieleki be one of the first things to be found, because that way get it down and start getting that draw, as you can see at the front there.
Straight to the front.
And then the other Regi that's good early on to get down in terms of order of placement is that Regidrago to get the access to its ability, Dragon's Horde, so you can start drawing cards that way. So, as you mentioned before, the order of operations so key in this deck to make sure that you get the most value out of all the abilities there. And especially with draw, you want to get it as soon as possible, so you might naturally draw into one of your Regis. You don't want to filter them out of your deck too quickly before you draw.
Yeah, I think there's just a quick cut by Christian before there's the draw from Liliana. Doesn't put her into the best of cards. There's another path to the peak there, maybe an ordinary Rod and a Research of the few cards that we do see. Does have the Ultra Ball, so it has maybe a few options, but no way of retreating this Regigigas right now, which means it's a bit susceptible to being attacked on the next turn.
Yeah, you see just the pass there. As we mentioned, if you're not going to get all the Regis out, it's not worth trying to get all the Regis out. You want to only get them all out in the turn where it's possible. So holding back a few actions there to save them for next turn. Get that Ultra Ball next turn, Research next turn. We'll be able to fully dig and find probably all the Regis. We'll see if it is the case. And on the other side, the Zoroark able to continue doing the game plan of getting the energy on, getting the V-Star access, and starting those attacks.
Yeah, straight up with the Research after that Marnie disruption from Liliana. Has picked up a few very good cards for himself, Christian, there, with the Air Balloon now on the active Manaphy, being able to use it as a pivot. Does have the energy, as you mentioned, on the Zoroark V on the bench. Will need to try and find out Zoroark V-Star, which currently is not available in his hand, I believe. Does hit his one-off Quick Pull that's remaining in his deck to continue bursting through with things like Crobat. Having already played the Spore, Lumineon wouldn't be quite the option that you would want to go for. You want to try and save that sometimes for some of those unique cards like the Volo or the Silene, or sometimes where you need the boss, for example.
Yeah, typically these decks try and choose between the likes of Crobat, Lumineon and Eldegoss, because you don't want too many of those Vs. There's not enough bench space for all of them. But in this Zoroark deck, all 3 available as options when needed. So the selection of which supporting V Pokemon you go for is vital. And now we're seeing just that final piece needed, the V-Star required here. The retreat from the Manaphy. Is it in hand from that Crobat draw? I don't think we got to see it.
I thought there was just a Zoroark V. So he might just be using that Void Return attack for 10 damage.
Oh, the reactions from Christian, we feel them every time.
So yeah, it's a reduction by the 20 because of the double turbo energy. He's not too pleased either, but he doesn't actually have another Zoroark on the bench. He doesn't have the bench space right now for it. So we'll have to use, because of the Sharon's Care in the prizes, we'll have to find a way to Volo maybe that Crobat V out of the way so he can bench another Zoroark, but missed the V-Star. You know, we've already mentioned he does play the 4 copies. Only one is prized. We typically would have expected him to have seen it, but he hasn't even seen either the Evo Incense or the Ultra Ball either.
Oh dear. So now there's a chance for Regigigas to start setting up. And as we mentioned, the Regidrago, great option to be able to bring it out and start drawing in the future.
Yep.
Research there done, looking to draw a fresh 7 cards. Capture Energy, another great option.
Quite a few cards there.
Natural draw into Regirock, that's going to help. Just one more to get.
And the scoop up net to get their Regigigas out the active where net required. Does have the Capture Energy as well. There's a few, again, multiple utility cards that will allow Liliana to try and build up that board to the 6 Regis as soon as possible. Just one more remaining with that quick ball available to her. And now it'll be interesting to see how she's going to kind of maneuver and which attacker she's going to be using at this point. With Manaphy in play, with Dunsparce in play, maybe it doesn't make too much sense to necessarily go for a Regirock attack. She hopefully would have already checked what her prizes are, and maybe there's not too much of a bad option to use any of them in reality, as long as she has the energies available in a discard, which we can see 2 Auroras there just sat side by side.
Yeah, and using Regice's Blizzard Bind right now would not be a smart idea, because that Zoroark would just evolve out of it and have a fresh set of attacks. So looking to get as much damage down as possible. As we mentioned before in the last game, no way to gust Pokemon in this one, so that Dunsparce is safe on the bench while the Manaphy is in play, and the Manaphy's on the bench, so it's safe. So there is no option to get rid of the Dunsparce, no option to get rid of the Manaphy. It is going to have to just be hit big into that active and start taking those prizes.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just kind of just looking back at those prizes again. It is that 1 Regieleki and 1 Regigigas. The Hisuian Heavy Ball is also in the prizes as well, so she won't be able to pull out any of the others to maybe maximize the value of the one of the 3 ofs that she has in her deck. But she looks like she's going active with the Dragon Horde's Regidrago, because it's a great option to deal as much damage as possible with the 160. Also has an out to the Dragon's Horde. Did pull out the other Regidrago into her hand as well, so knowing if it does get knocked out, she can replenish it back to her board as soon as possible.
Yeah, so everything in place now, and as we mentioned, that typical trade-off that you see in these matchups is a single hit from a single prize, return knockout from the 2 prize. Single hit from the single prize gets the 2 prizes. And considering Liliana has started first, if we continue like this, with neither side being disrupted, that's where we're going to see the Regis come out on top, because they've started that prize trade off that race. Now, the only way you'd stop that would be through the Sharon's Care, typically, as you'd be able to steal a turn back. But as we know, Sharon's Care won't be available until the final few prizes, so it looks like at this stage, Liliana should win if they continue going no disruption. Yeah,
I'm really interested to see how Christian plays out the rest of his turns. Just a quick double check there, but just making sure that the sequencing is also all correct as well. But yeah, just as I was mentioning, Christian's in a bit of a sticky spot because he doesn't have that extra Zoroark on the bench. This Zoroark has tanked some damage, but it just means it's very likely to be going down on the next turn. And then he won't have another attacker to go next
as we mentioned, there's no gust, so putting a single prize up into the active, could be the Gengar, could be the Oranguru, will be fine for a turn because it will stay, get knocked out, and not affect the prize trade that we've spoken about. So it's going to be a tough one here for both players to play out the rest of the time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's quite a short amount of time left as well, so just waiting on a judge call here, which is why you can see us again.
We're back. But yes, I think there was around 8 minutes still remaining or so. Maybe it was a little bit less. But it just kind of opens up a few options. Christian ideally wouldn't want to be using that DT to retreat because, again, you know, we've got to think about those resources again that he has to manage. Obviously, he does have the Silene, but if he hits double heads, that's kind of another way of just not getting your energies back to the top of the deck as well. So it could be a little bit troubling here because it's like he's likely to have to retreat, unfortunately. And then Liliana will just continue to kind of punch through to see what's in the active spot. Yeah, with that Regice being able to block off the attack, that can steal a turn back. We mentioned there's loads of ways for either side to steal turns back. The main option being the Sharon's Care available on the other side, and that's in the prizes, so it's going to be tough here. And we know that. Yep, Liliana doesn't know that, so Liliana's going to have to think to play around the potential for a Sharon's Care to skip a turn. So
there's going to be a lot of tension right now for these players as they're thinking there's a long journey ahead, a marathon, and lots of hurdles along the way that they'll have to jump over. And if it goes in favour of Liliana for the rest of this game, she is starting the prize race first in terms of getting that first attack off.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of time, a lot of time required to fulfil that action.
100%. I mean, and this is, after all, we're in day 2 of Warsaw Regionals. This is round 3 of day 2, so there's 2 further rounds as well, with both players on that 26 mark. 2 extra wins if they do happen to lose this game. 2 extra wins take them to 32. The winner potentially could reach that 35, which is glorious. Maybe a bit overkill in terms of the actual points required for top 8. But, you know, they want to be putting themselves in the best position possible. They want to be taking points where and when necessary, where they can. So it's one of those things where Liliana is going to be making sure to try and get that point back, and Christians may have to try and figure out a way of still securing the win over the series.
Yeah, and we've mentioned a lot of the names on the table, the feature table, and their experience, their results. You, before this game, said you haven't seen much of these two.
No, definitely not. I mean, Christian, he's been I've seen him as a player before, in and around the game. I think he's had a couple of good finishes at some international championships before. Liliana's a new name that is fantastic to see. Again, from a country we don't see too many of, which is brilliant. At the same time, it's fantastic to kind of showcase her capabilities and her abilities of playing such a, thinking deck, because it is combo. You have to be able to sequence correctly.
And you've been seeing it being done beautifully here, and the holding of cards. One of the hardest things to do, everyone here watching has probably played a bit of Pokemon trading card game online. And when a card is shiny and green, you want to play it. And she's doing a great job of not playing the shining green card, holding on to it and playing for the better sequencing in the future. So we are just waiting on a judge call, I think, just to make sure we get the right thing here. With a judge call, it can often add a bit of time to the round, as we want to make it as fair as possible. Making sure these games on the feature table are officiated as well as possible.
Of course.
And so that way we might need to add a bit more time, because typically games don't have that much judge requirement.
Yeah, there's a lot of stakes in these games. So as we just considering going back to show again the kind of current state of the game right now, as you mentioned, with Liliana, does have the full Reggies, does have all the energies ready to kind of keep attacking. Christian, as on his side of the board, having already tanked a hit with that Zoroark, has looked at, I believe, because of the way he's tilted the Oranguru, has used the Primate Wisdom ability already, but doesn't have a secondary attacker on there. So just a bit of a reminder for everyone, the current state of play. Christian is 1 game up. This is currently game 2. We've got just over 7 minutes remaining for Liliana to try and tie up the series.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Christian's got a bit of experience. We noticed that in that first game, just finding a unorthodox route to victory against a deck that it's not typically prepared for.
Gets their heads. That's massive, I think. Sorry to interrupt, but it's always such a big card to play, such a hype card to play.
As I mentioned, I like to ignore the Cramomatic as much as possible, because it's not my not my favourite card in my history. So we did just find out what was going on with the judge there.
I believe I didn't quite catch it, unfortunately, but as soon as we find out. Okay, so then just confirming there was a bit of slow play, unfortunately. So just reminding everyone, you've got to sort of maintain that state of play, that speed of play. You can't sort of constantly switch between different speeds. Just making sure, that's why we have the officials there, to make sure that the game is as clean, as efficient as possible, and giving both players the best possible chance.
Do we know who the slow play was called against? And because I think there might have been a prize loss with it. Yeah,
there was a prize loss with it as well. It was on Christian's side of the board whilst we were in the middle of the game, so it feels likely it's from that side of things. Maybe it's, we just got confirmation it was Christian as well. I believe it was just as we were getting a few of the, maybe mulling over his options there. But this happens. You're playing on the feature match. There's a lot of pressure involved. You're 1 game up. Your board state is probably not ideal from that side of things. So yeah, he's having to dig for the power pad to get the Volo back into his deck.
And it's really important we keep slow play as part of the game, because in these big pressure games, like we said, the time is starting to run out. And having that ability for both players to get a result that they're aiming for by playing at that speed, it's really hard to do so. So we respect the judges for keeping an eye on that. It's a really tough thing to keep track of for a judge. They're constantly counting in their head just to check to see whether an action has taken too long. And so that's the case. And unfortunately, we can't show you the prize loss through any of the graphics here. But bear that in mind when we see these prizes being taken. So there are 2 prizes less to be taken for Liliana.
Yep, so the prizes still show as a 6. But Liliana, for her to win this game too, just needs to take 4 prizes. It's been a massive change into the Pokemon community and the game for the last number of years now, where it's just still giving the opportunity to play with the same 6 prize cards.
Yeah, it's to try and keep it fair, right? To make sure a card doesn't get essentially lost zoned from the prize cards and removed from the game. Because if you were to draw them, that would be potentially unfair, because that's more than the prize penalty is intended to give. But anyway, we get back to the game. So now 3 prizes remaining for Liliana.
She's very quickly announced that attack, that giant fangs attack from the Drago after a promoted single prizer from Christian's side of the board. Does now get that Zoroark V extra attacker onto the bench. Is looking to Volo away his Crobat V as well, sort of reducing the options around an additional 2 prizer on his bench. Still has the Manaphy there, still has the Dunsparce, still has many defensive options despite not having access to that Sharon's Care.
And so we see right now Liliana is in a strong position. Regidrago, the strongest of the attackers, just for raw damage alone on the Regi side. Normally the weakness from the Regirock would be the option to go for, but with Dunsparce on the bench, that is not an option here against the Hisuian Zoroark. So we see Oranguru promoted here, and that will be the Gengar was knocked out in the last turn, which is why only 1 prize was taken. Just Christian knowing that slowing the play down there with the 1 prize at a time will help him to be able to set up fully. Yeah,
definitely. Just kind of feeding the 1 prizes at the moment. Still not quite wanting to use that Zoroark V-Star to kind of attack and maybe force the issue where Liliana can just find a way of getting another Regi back down and then resetting some of her attackers. Christian identifying Waby, that's the best way of his route to victory, kind of just playing that defensive mode at the moment. Liliana taking now a 2nd prize with that Giant Fangs attack, just kind of going through the motions. Christian is kind of just looking for a way of just getting out of this at the moment.
We see so many Regis in Liliana's hand, so options to replace at the end of the turn should the hand remain with no Marnie being played. And this is where Regi shines, isn't it? Once it's fully set up, it's fully thinned the deck, and all you have left pretty much is just Regis and
all them
ways to find them.
Cards.
All the energies are in your discard pile. You get them back through the Regigigas's ability, so you're never going to have to worry too much about anything other than Ancient Wisdom and getting your Regis out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think this is a little bit of a troubling scenario for Christian right now. The time is ticking. I don't know if there was additional time added because of the judge call. We can get that confirmed, but at the moment we're still playing to the time that's on the clock. Yes, I did just get confirmation that there was additional time added as well. So Liliana may be in a pretty good spot to take the remaining 2 prizes because of the double prize loss penalty that Christian has unfortunately taken into this feature match here. But, going through the motions still, we're just kind of also getting a chance to look through Liliana's discard pile. All those paths to the peaks are still there that are currently being used. I believe that's maybe all 4 in a discard. So Christian will always seem to have access now to other Crobats and the Lumineon and the Eldegoss, which he plays. He's using all 3.
Yeah, so this is where the Regis really shines against Zoroark. We mentioned beforehand, Regis is the favourable matchup here. Once it's set up and that prize race begins, you are in the favourable position, especially when either Dunsparce or Sharon's Care is unavailable for whatever reason. In this case, Sharon's Care in the prizes. So an attack announced there. Hisuian Zoroark going to return a knockout there with Ticking Curse. And now we see that Regice going up. This is where you can start to disrupt Regice when the 2-hit knockout is needed, using Blizzard Bind for 100 damage and removing that ability to use Ticking Curse in the following turn is so key here to win that race.
Yeah, looking for that instant return attack here with the time ticking as well, making sure that she's kind of still sequencing correctly, making sure the right pieces of the puzzle are there to use the attack. That Blizzard Bind, as you mentioned, so vital. We saw it actually come to really put herself in a really good position in game 1, really forcing Christian to have to find that Zoroark as well. So there's the damage, up to 120 now on that active Hisuian Zoroark V-Star. Christian there starting to try and set up a third attacker, because now 2 of his V-Stars are now in damaged positions, because Liliana only needs to take 2 more prizes. Now, time is currently down on our clock, on our screen for everyone. As mentioned, there was additional time added on for the judge call that was happened. Christian's in a position where he has to not give up a further 2 prizes because of a small penalty that he's had to take into this take in this feature match. But if time is called, and this is where we're working with, there are going to be at least an additional 3 turns. But we'll get confirmation of when time will be called. I'm sure hopefully the judges will give us a bit of a steer from the little die that they like to put out as well.
And part of the fairness that we have here at these tournaments is the 2 players and the judge are in their own little world with their headsets on. They can't speak to anyone outside of it, so we let them carry on, play with the fairness that they plan to do so. So we'll let them self-officiate as a trio. When we see the potential marker coming down, so players often put a dice down to signify turn 0 through to 3. We'll go based off of their decisions and movements here to try and see what's going on. But for now, we do see a fresh Hisuian Zoroark in the active, and as mentioned, no Gust available for the Reggie deck. So we'll need to get a 2-hit knockout on whatever's in the active spot. And the 2 Hisuian Zoroarks on the bench, clocking up that damage, and I'm sure right now Christian's just hoping that the next knockout will be the one that gets him that Sharon's Care out of the discard, out of the prize cards.
Yeah, 100%. I think Liliana just had to play that Marnie there, didn't have another Regice available, but there goes the ordinary rod, sorry, not super rod, and I believe I saw an Ultra Ball in hand.
Oh, the emotion from Christian.
Yeah, I think he's starting to see not the writing on the wall yet. He can start to have a little look at that. So we just had confirmation that time was called. So if time was called in this turn, Liliana would be turn 0. If it was called just before, she's turn 1. But she still has these 2 turns to be able to take a final 2 prizes. So if it does happen to take some damage here onto the Zoroark, I think if you're Christian, you're going to want to try and retreat into one of those single prizes to try and limit that opportunity there as well.
A fun little thought here for Christian is what can he put up that will survive 2 attacks, and the Dunsparce is there to remove the weakness from the Hisuian Zoroark, so as long as they've got full hit points they'll be able to survive 2 attacks. All of the support Pokemon are also options, but Crobat will have the weakness because it's not a normal type Pokemon, so we'll keep that fighting weakness. The Luminion has a lightning weakness, so Regieleki can knock it out, but there is an Eldegoss in there that has a fire weakness, and as there's no Reggie Flaro or something like that, there is no option for a weakness attack on Eldegoss, and with 180 hit points is out of range of any of the attacks of the Reggies. So in terms of defensive final turns decisions to try and force the draw, or force the win, so force the no result in this game and force the win, that is an option there. There is also, as he's trying here, single prizer as an option to send up and avoid the knockout too.
Yeah, because that Zoroark did take a heavy hit from that Regidrago. Christian's just kind of identifying and forcing a situation where Liliana not only needs to retreat, but also has to find a way to gust the active. But because she doesn't have a boss's orders, I think she's just scooped up her cards. Unfortunately, then that means she is sort of conceding that this game cannot finish, and Christian can breathe a sigh of relief. We've seen him go through all the emotions in Game 1 and Game 2. So Game 2 not finishing and Christian winning Game 1 means he's the victor in this feature match.
And did so well in that first game to get the win off the Reggies. It's such a tough matchup for the Zoroark to beat the Reggies. As we mentioned, a 60 to 65% win rate for Reggies, so generally in favour in those best of 3s. And the fact that he got that first game and didn't have the Sharon's Care in the second game, you saw the emotion on him. He was just trying to get to the end of that. And because that first game took so long, as it tends to do with the Reggies, there wasn't enough time to complete the second game there, and Christian did come out on top. But Liliana, what a player, one that we'll hopefully be seeing more of in the future.
Yeah, definitely. She's, like I mentioned, she's still on 26 points, which is still a fantastic position to be in with 2 final rounds to go. Christian moves on to 29 points, which puts himself in such a good position to try and make it into top 8. But, of course, there's loads of things that still can happen, lots of variants. Maybe Liliana can work her way through the rest of the field with her play and sort of be able to take a couple more victories.
Yeah, so we are here on day 2 of Warsaw Regional. We've had lots of amazing results so far. That was round 11.
12.
Round 12. Beyond 7, I'm struggling. So round 12 is a big number. We are here in the final rounds of the Swiss.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking to hopefully see some of the seniors and junior finals, as well as the top 8 here from the Masters finals. So any particular excitement for you over the top 8s in the finals here? Any decks you're hoping to see?
I mean, there's so many different decks at the moment. The meta is such a wide currently for all the decks. You know, every deck can beat one another. We've just seen Zoroark beat a slightly unfavorable matchup in the Regis. We have all those Giratinas flying around as well, the Lost Zone mechanics.
It's like 25% of the day 2 decks here in the Masters.
Exactly. And then the Palkia is always going to be there, right? We have also a couple of unique decks that have kind of snuck into day 2 as well. I'm going to try and figure out how well they're doing. We've got Mewtwo v Union Control decks also batting around. There's one Urshifu VMAX
made it
deck.
Through. Is that the one, the mirror with Tord? I saw Tord tweet out he had a mirror of Urshi, so even though he lost it, he knew a bear was going to go on and do well.
Yeah, very potentially. I believe Tord ended up going 6-3 with it anyway, so we know it's, you know, there's a lot of power in the deck itself, but ended up also having to face one, and yeah, there is one in day 2, so it'll be really interesting to see. What we're going to be trying to do is bring those finals from the seniors as well, because then we get to see, you know, the up-and-coming youngsters of the game who will eventually one day be part of the Masters circuit as well.
Oh, well, we're looking forward to that, and from my point of view, I'm excited to go get some food. A lot of people here are excited to get some food. Really important for these players to go on stage and they're not hungry, because it can affect your focus. But for me, it's been a wonderful start to today, and I'm excited to see some finals after this little break.